Hope you're having a great day. I want to thank you so much for joining us here and welcome you into America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner and myself. My name is Chris Swan. Here's how you reach out, 419-794-3030. It's 419-794-3030. Always available online day and night, americasretirementheadquarters.com. On today's show, we'll talk about how to keep emotion from steering your retirement plan, with a little help, of course. Are we seeing a reversal of pandemic job trends and turning the tooth fairy into a teachable moment about money? All this and more, but first, got to check in with the guys. Nolan, welcome back. It's been a little while, but Nolan and Scott, glad to be with you guys. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I've been traveling a lot. I've been speaking at some conferences and listening to some other conferences, and I think it's very timely with the markets and what's going on. So, we've got a lot of great information from all the travels that I have for our listeners, and definitely a good time to keep everybody informed.
Yes, welcome back. I know you were doing a lot of layovers and in Ohio, in for a couple of days and then back out. But it's good to have you back. I was did have the pleasure of traveling with one of the trips down to Florida, which was awesome. Got a lot out of it. And I had this past weekend. I would be remiss if I didn't say keep the listeners informed on my things that have been happening with me. So my daughter, who I've mentioned several times, has actually graduated from Kent State University. She played her final softball games this past weekend, had very proud of her, had a phenomenal career, and finished with a very impressive 3.9 GPA, and
wow.
Had a great softball career, and she's officially a non-athletic normal person. She did an acronym for me, and I said, what is that? And she said, it's a non-athletic normal person. So, whatever. So, I'm done traveling, so I won't be down to see you for sports, Chris, but I may come down to visit just to say hi.
Yeah, always good to have people down here. And, it's one of those big life events, graduation. And as we say many times here on the show, life is rarely inexpensive. I know caps and gowns and things like that, those do cost money. And I'm sure she reached out to dear old dad to foot the bill. So something to keep in mind when it comes to retirement. Life is going to happen, and you got to account for those things because it's rarely cheap. So that's what we're here about. And let's go ahead and dive into the show. As the economy and geopolitics in Ukraine continue to impact wild market swings, I've heard a lot of advisors say, stay the course during these volatile times. But what if you don't have the stomach for that? Say you're approaching retirement. There was an article in Kiplinger magazine that talked about finding safe harbors for your savings. Guys, what exactly do they mean by this, and what do you think about this approach?
Well, I think for the past several months, we've been talking about getting prepared for a market crash, and, all of a sudden it's really here. We've seen what's happened this week, last week, and, really going back over the last several months, the market start to have some type of decline. And, I think about it like running the fire safety drill. So you kind of want to be practicing these events before your house catches on fire. Those are some of the ways that, avoid getting hurt. Things and people oftentimes talk about staying the course. And there could be a lot to be said about that. And I think a lot of it comes back to your age, your goals, and your objectives. So, for somebody who's much younger, like Courtney at our office, who's saving and investing, for 20 or 30 years down the road for her retirement time, I'm not saying that the market going down in her statement, showing declines in value doesn't feel good. But the reality is that actually can be an opportunity for her, because what she's getting to do is she's getting to acquire more and more shares. The same would be true with my son, who owns crypto mining machines, and he uses those machines to get Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin has been very volatile. But if he believes in the long run of what he's doing, he's getting to acquire more and more shares now while the market's down. The difference is, though, when you flash forward, so a lot of the people that we work with that are close to or in retirement time, they may not have the luxury of time to make up for mistakes. At the same time, you don't want to jump out the second or third story window when your house is on fire.
Sure.
So, making a quick bad decision just because you don't feel good can be a very costly mistake. And, what the markets have taught us is that time and time again, it's not abnormal to have market pullbacks like what we're seeing right now. The question becomes, how bad are things going to get? So instead of really shifting gears or jumping out the window and, abandoning ship or even staying the course, I think this is a time where it's more it's just so important to look at your own individual situation. Some of the best advice that I can give you is for those of you that are close to or in retirement time, you need to be making sure that you have anywhere from 6 months to 3 years worth of income needs set aside, really in investments that are not subject to stock market risk. That way you can kind of weather through the storm. Know when you're going to need the money. Again, if you don't need the money right away and you got time on your side, don't worry so much. You could look at today as a buying opportunity. Then you need to understand what you own and the companies that you own. We've gone through examples of looking at companies that have very low debt, high cash positions. And if you can look and understand what you own and own healthy companies in this environment, again, it can turn panic into opportunity. So again, think about things that have happened in the past and how investors who've been very successful. And in my 28 years of doing this, even going back to what happened with COVID in 2020 when the market went down really fast, those people who went in and took advantage of things, now saw a good recovery of that. We've seen that happen when 2008 crash went down. We saw that when the 2000 crash. But again, using 2000 as an example, it was really 3 years that were kind of painful years in the market. So, in this type of environment is maybe not an area where you go all in and buy on this dip right now, but maybe wade into the waters, look at some buying opportunities. And, that's the thing that I would tell you. If you're somebody who's listening to us, whether, again, it's a first time that you've tuned into the show or you've been listening to us for years, if, a little bit of insight is starting to feel uncomfortable, the best thing we can do is let's have a conversation. Let's talk. What we can do is we can stress test your portfolio and tell you if things get bad, what things look like and how far could things go. We could talk about some of the safe havens. We could map out the plan for you and really run an independent portfolio analysis. So I'd love to have a conversation with you and help make sure that I steer you down the tough times, whether you're a client or just a long-time listener. I think getting somebody to kind of help hold your hand through this environment will get you to be able to make smart decisions.
So, Roland, let me ask a question. So, you mentioned Courtney in the office here. She's, obviously, one of the younger employees. She's been with you for what I think 13 years or so. In my situation, I'm 60. Okay, I know I'm 5 years from the 65 for Medicare and things like that. But and I'm looking to work at least, committed to at least 10 more years. What is that magic number where I need to, people in my situation where I need to start thinking about shifting a little bit because I'm kind of an aggressive investor. I figure I've got 10 years, but I don't know that I can recover if I were to lose 50% of my portfolio. Is there a magic number? Is it 62 or 63, or do I need to just kind of start thinking about changing gears today?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I would say, 10 years puts the odds in your favor, for owning equities. And again, you've always got to say past performance doesn't guarantee future results. And, we had that 2000 to 2010 environment where the market went up, crashed, went back up, crashed again. And, there was a lost period of time for investors who just, did a buy and hold type strategy. But in our industry, I think where people really need to start paying attention to the asset allocation of their portfolio is what is coined now the retirement red zone. So it's 5 years before retirement or the first 5 years into retirement, because what happens is the sequence of returns begins to become a bigger risk and becomes much more of an important thing to take a look at as you get within that 5 years of retiring or 5 years into retirement time. So again, those that are listening, that 5 year mark is something to pay careful attention to.
Obviously, we can't control, you and I listening, can't control what the market is going to do, how it is going to perform over the course of our retirement. Obviously, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. What we can control, and it's always important to take control of the things you can't control, is how that market volatility, those fluctuations are going to affect us. How much risk are we taking in our portfolio? What kind of assets do we have coming in that aren't affected by the market, as Nolan was talking about? Having that independent portfolio analysis is pretty critical, especially as you start rounding that corner, start approaching, and entering into retirement, that retirement red zone, like Nolan said. And so to have that run, to see where you stand right now and see what a potential market drawback could do to your prospects. And if you find out that it is not a good situation, finding ways to maybe change that dynamic, pick up the phone, give a call. Schedule a time to speak with America's Retirement Headquarters. 419-794-3030 is the number. It's 419-794-3030, or go online. Schedule time there as well, americasretirementheadquarters.com. Obviously, as Nolan said, he's been doing this for 28 years now. He has helped lots of people get to retirement and through retirement. And I think the goal for most people is to retire once and then not have to unretire. But that hasn't been the case as of late. We're seeing a reversal of pandemic job trends when it comes to those who are part of the Great Resignation. The Census Bureau says more than 3% of workers who had retired a year earlier, well, they're now back in the workforce, and that's due to high inflation and the fact that, well, there are plenty of jobs out there. Guys, when somebody comes to you with desires of retiring early because they just don't want to do it anymore, they don't want to work anymore, how do you go about making those goals become a reality and helping prevent that unretirement?
Well, I would say for me, it's like anything in life, mapping out a plan and taking a look at, the different impacts that it could have on your retirement for being able to retire early. Things like the inflation, mapping out your retirement income plan, addressing issues like if a market correction continues. All of these things can be done really by using some of the like financial planning software that we use. And having those tools and resources and kind of running the numbers and letting people know what it looks like. But Scott, I would say my other experience that talking with a lot of retirees, especially, somebody before the age 65, I think one of the biggest concerns I hear people talk about is healthcare costs.
Well, there's no question. It is a big concern of a lot of people. And one of the things I run into a lot is if you maybe you have someone that's 65, 66, 67 years old, they're going to retire. Their spouse may be considerably younger, 60 years old. Well, they've got 5 years to wait until Medicare. There's not a whole lot of options available. We have the Unaffordable Care Act that they can always participate in. And that's, I spoke with someone last week about that, and he's actually an advisor that works in our office here, and he was absolutely floored when I gave him the numbers. They're both near 60, 58 and 59 years old, him and his wife. And I put together some quotes for them, and the numbers were staggering for him. He says, how do people afford this? He was looking at numbers of about $12,000 a year in premium, and on top of that, $17,000 in deductible. So his out-of-pocket expenses were looking to be roughly $30,000 a year if he were to have a catastrophic situation for him and his wife. And a lot of people aren't positioned to absorb that kind of out-of-pocket expenses for health care. So where does that money come from? It's going to come from their investments, their portfolios that they've got put in place. I see the trends. We talked about the trends in previous shows on whether people are retiring at 65. I always say you go back in the older days where when you turned 65, you did a few things. One, you had a birthday, turned 65, you automatically sign up for Social Security, you sign up for your Medicare, and you retire. I mean, that's what people did, 20, 25 years ago. That's not happening anymore. And one of the things that I've really noticed with the pandemic and the healthcare is, it's kind of like what you said, Chris, leading into this segment. There's a variety of reasons why people aren't working anymore and just got out of it during the pandemic. One of the things that I've seen is a lot of people are just burnt out. And I'm seeing a lot of people that were working past 65 from 66 to 68, 69 years old. They're coming in saying, I met with them a year ago, and they're coming in and they're saying, I'm done. I'm out of here. And I think one of the big contributing factors to that is very simply a lot of the people that left during the pandemic, especially the younger employees, aren't coming back in. So any of the older employees that are 65 and older, the workload on them has doubled or tripled at times. Well, when you're at that stage of your career, things are supposed to slow down a little bit. And I'm not saying you get lazy and don't work, but things are supposed to slow down a little bit. Well, now these employers are asking for these older employees to take on the job of 3 people. And quite frankly, the stress level is off the charts for these people. I mean, I can't imagine how they handle that, being asked to do so much more work, longer hours at 67, 68 years old.
That's true. I mean, they obviously have a lot of other things to do in life and want to enjoy, and weather like this, get out there in the yard and spend time with their grandkids. I think about this though, and I think about the fact that there is a lot that can be done though. So maybe you're concerned a little bit about healthcare costs, but you have the dream and desire to retire early. And just being biased, obviously, as an owner, I think, one of the values of us working together is I can think about so many situations of folks who've come into the office and maybe had that initial sticker shock of how much it's going to cost for healthcare expenses. But, with what you call the unaffordable, the way that you make that affordable is through, like anything else, proper planning. So
Right.
we've had a couple of situations where clients last year were looking to retire. What we were able to do is we were able to shift their money, from their left pocket to their right pocket and move money into accounts that didn't count against them for what their healthcare expenses were. So now this year they were able to move into retirement time, and for the spouse or both of them who needed income and needed to have health insurance costs, we were able to get them income from sources that weren't necessarily countable with healthcare related. So the key thought process there is, if you're going back to the time frame that you were asking earlier, if anybody is looking to retire in the next year and you're going to retire before the age of 65, I would highly recommend that you sit down and you look at your healthcare plan, because if you do stuff this year in preparing for next year, you can sometimes cut 30, 40, 50, 60% out of your monthly healthcare related expenses. Again, it's a matter of knowing how to navigate, what the rules are and having a system in place to make sure that you get the right type of healthcare cost, but do it in an affordable way.
One of the things that I've run into a lot lately is, anybody can go out on healthcare.gov, the marketplace, and get a what-if quote. You can figure out and find out how much is this going to cost me, and a lot of people do that. They'll log in. You don't have to create an account, because everybody's afraid to create an account on there because, oh my gosh, the government's going to have all my information. Sad to report, that is true. They will have all of your information. Actually, they already do. But what I'm really finding a lot of people doing today is they'll go out and they'll put in under the marketplace something for just themselves. And I had this actually happen last week, and it's like, well, my wife doesn't. My husband's on social Medicare, and I'm just trying to get a price for my wife. Well, they didn't put any information in for the husband. Now, even though they're not going to take the health insurance, the Unaffordable Care Act is truly based on income. It has nothing to do with health anymore. I mean, what a novel concept, right? I mean, I'm covering your health issues, but I don't care what health conditions you have. I'll write anybody, okay? I digress. But anyhow, it's very important to understand that when you look at the income levels, it's for the household, not the individual that's signing up for the Medicare or for the individual health insurance. So it's very important to put all of the information in, even if the husband is, or the wife, whoever's 65, doesn't matter. If they're not taking it, we still calculate a premium tax credit on the household income. It is drastically different. I've had people come in and say, well, I went on the marketplace and I see that I get a $750 premium tax credit. Basically, what that simply means is, because of their income levels and their ages, they get basically money from the government to help offset the high costs of the health care. And they say, I'm getting $750. I said, well, did you put your wife and you in there? And they said, well, I don't need it. I go, yeah, but it's still a joint income. And it drops it $400 or $500 a month, which drastically changes their planning moving forward into retirement. So it's important to understand this. You know, I've been doing this a long time. I've been working with people with the marketplace and the individual health insurance since Obamacare came out. There's a lot of different ways to navigate through that. Just here in Northwest Ohio, in our area, there are 78 different plans to look at.
Wow.
Yeah, and one of the things I do is I go through all of those and I eliminate 75% of them, and then we go through and look at the ones that, whether it's the network, the hospitals, the doctors, the out-of-pocket expenses that you're willing to pay, the deductible, the premiums. I go through and I navigate all of that with you and help you go through that.
And I think that, that's one of the values again of working with a professional, that this is what they do, because if you put the wrong numbers in there and you apply for that premium tax credit and you get that premium tax credit, you'll might get a surprise when you go meet with your accountant the next year, because it's when you file your taxes, again, a married couple filing joint, even if one of the spouses is older, because they're using household income. If somebody got a premium tax credit of, let's say, $500 a month, and then when they went and they applied for their taxes the following year, and they actually did not qualify for that, they will owe that $6,000 when they file their taxes. So that's not a shocker that you want to go into. Again, we're trying to talk about how to have a relaxing retirement if you want to retire early. And think about that. If you did retire early and all of a sudden the first year into it, when you're going to file your taxes, now you owe $6,000.
Yes.
That can tailspin things out of control. But again, it always comes down to working with a professional that can help you navigate and keep your costs down and make sure that these big whammies don't catch you off guard.
And the crazy thing is, Nolan, $1 can make the difference. You wouldn't think so, but it's $1. And so, it is an estimated income for the following year. We really don't know. And, life happens. And if something were to happen down the, 6 months into the following year, and you decide you needed to take money out of a retirement plan for a purchase or some need that you had, if you take that money out, that's income. Now, the exception to that is a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA does not count as taxable income or accountable income for the marketplace. So like Nolan said, reach out if you have any questions, concerns, or issues about health insurance. I'm here to help you out with that, because it is there are drastic differences in penalties if you make the wrong choice.
I would venture to say that a good number of the people who were part of the Great Resignation, who retired early, they didn't really consult with anybody before they pulled the trigger on that. Again, most of these were pretty quick decisions, and so the planning that went into it prior probably didn't happen. And so I would assume there was a lot of sticker shock that went into when they actually went into retirement. Definitely a measure twice, cut once situation. Speaking with professionals beforehand, as Nolan said, there are things you can do where essentially you're moving money from your left pocket to your right pocket that could, in the long run, for the next year, count as 30 to 40% savings on your insurance. And it should go without saying, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway because it's important. That's 30 to 40% more that you get to keep for yourself to use towards your retirement that could make or break it and keep you from unretiring. Like we said, that's the name of the game. Ultimately, whatever it is you want to do in retirement, you want to make sure that once you retire, you stay retired, unless you decide you just want to go back to the workforce or do something part-time like my father did. But it all starts with proper planning. And that all starts with a phone call to the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, 419-794-3030. Again, that's 419-794-3030. Don't forget to ask, having that complimentary independent portfolio analysis run to see where you stand right now, see what market volatility could do to you. And if there are problems, go ahead and address them head on now and maybe change course a little bit before it becomes a bigger issue down the line. 419-794-3030 and online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. We appreciate you joining us today here on America's Retirement Headquarters. More to come after the break.